I think anyone that lives in Massachusetts just ends up loving anything creepy and weird, or is from there, or is born there. You just kind of grew up with this. I mean, everything's old in the rest of the country. Everything seems new, but like my parents live in Gloucester now, and there's still people that tell old sea stories in Gloucester, and it's so real. It's such a part of the culture there.
Yeah, I love like walking through a graveyard in Massachusetts as opposed to walking in a graveyard out here. It's like, what do you get? 100 years in Massachusetts? You walk through a graveyard, you're like, whoa, is that? Oh, Paul Revere. That's Paul Revere's grave. Okay.
I know.
Ryan, what do we love?
We love ghost stories.
And what do we have?
We have people with ghost stories.
So what are we going to do?
We're going to listen to those ghost stories.
Let's get spooky.
Let's get spooky.
I moved around a lot as a kid, and the house that I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it's a pretty old house. I looked it up on Zillow, and it was, I think, it was built in 1925. So that's almost 100 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up in that house when I was a wee toddler up until I was about, I would say 10. And then I moved to Boston, which is a whole nother story. But the house that I grew up in Pittsburgh, even as a little one, I had experiences there that stuck with me and has shaped me in ways that, in terms of my sleeping habits, I think.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I grew up as an only child. I have two half siblings that I didn't grow up with, but I grew up as an only child. So coupling that with my imagination as a little one, trying to get to bed at night with the experiences that I had at this house, made it difficult into my 30s to fall asleep at night.
Wow.
And I think a lot of it had to do with the house I grew up in and what I saw. And I'll be frank and say that I didn't see a ghost full on. I never really saw an apparition at the house. But what I did see was a haze, a smoky, cloudy haze that hung really low around the house in the middle of the night. I remember being around like 6 or 7 years old, and I was trying to get to bed, trying to fall asleep. My parents were asleep, and I knew because my dad had a tremendous snore, and I could hear him from across the hall where my bedroom was on the second floor. Their bedroom was kind of like catty-corner to mine, so I could always hear, and they left their door ajar so I could hear. And they were my dad was snoring. I knew they were asleep, and I couldn't fall asleep. And I just felt odd. Even at like 6 or 7, you kind of have a feeling of, you're not alone. And, I just didn't feel good. So I hopped out of bed and I peeked out of my door, and where it was on the second floor, the doorway to my bedroom led to the stairway going down to the first floor. So as soon as you walk out, you see the stairway, and we had a hall light on, like a little night light that was always flipped on. And I just remember seeing this smoke, this haze. And I thought at first the house was on fire. And I was really nervous, and I didn't know what to do. But then I felt, the second feeling was, oh, this isn't smoke. I don't know what this is. And then I felt really uneasy, and I felt like I wasn't alone. I felt like there was somebody there, but it wasn't human. Wow. And I just remember feeling these thoughts at like 6 or 7. And then that happened multiple times, sometimes multiple times a week. And then I'd close my bedroom door, and then sometimes that haze would end up in my bedroom, and I would just, cover myself with the blanket and just look out and just try to fall asleep. And it was impossible for me to fall asleep.
And this literally looked like smoke or a fog you'd see on like on a street if you were driving with a...
Yes, like a low hanging fog. It was white, gray, and almost kind of like if you were to go to a lake early morning fishing, and you'd see that low hanging fog around the sides of the lake. It was just really odd, and it almost looked like smoke because it was like a white haze. It was bizarre.
And your parents didn't smoke cigarette
Not in the middle of the night, no.
or anything
I'm from
else?
Pittsburgh, everybody smokes cigarettes there, but no, not at that hour.
I just picture your dad being like, "Oh God, finally I can smoke a cigarette." Ah, and he's blowing out into the hallway, and meanwhile you're like, "Yeah, oh my God."
Yeah, it's a ghost. Yeah, it was really weird. And then later on in life, when we'd moved away from that house, my mom and I, my mom's kind of like a clairvoyant type, and so are her sisters, but always been the one to kind of been more open-minded. My dad was more of a skeptic, smoking cigs, and I don't believe in ghosts. But my mom,
Here's the penguin.
Hey, man.
Danny DeVito. But my mom, she was much more open-minded to all that stuff, and she loves anything ghosty. So when I had opened up to her about, I had these weird experiences at the house in Pittsburgh, and she goes, what did you see? And I told her about that smoke, that haze. And she told me later on, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Wow.
Yeah. And she had the same visual experience, but a little different. She, I guess, went down to the kitchen one day. I had taken a nap. I was even younger then. And I had taken a nap, and she went down to the kitchen to, make a coffee or something, and then she flipped on the light, and she noticed that there was all this haze in the kitchen. She thought something was also on fire.
Wow.
And immediately she felt like, oh gosh, fire. And then the second thought was, there's nothing on fire. What could this possibly be?
Right.
And then she knew, and then she thought, oh, this isn't good, because she knew that the woman that owned the house previous to us had died there, and that freaked her out. So she called my grandmother, and not too long after that, she showed up with a couple bottles of holy water. And I thought that was really funny. Like they had just bought the house, and it was just that haze was a prominent thing. It was like whatever was there, whether it be that woman that had previously died in the house, that's the way it was kind of manifesting itself in this weird fog light. Yeah.
Your grandmother going to pick up holy water and then bring it to your house is like maybe my favorite like little cut to in this movie.
I know.
Like,
and that's so on the money for her. She just brought these little vials of holy water over.
You mentioned that your mother and maybe grandmother were semi-clairvoyant.
Yeah, I would say so.
What's the backstory on that? And is that something that like is just in their family? Like you guys feel like you might have a little energy there?
I think we definitely do, without sounding too witchy, because it's such a trend. Right. It really is. There's all these shops in LA that sell crystals, and I get kind of annoyed by that, because it's whatever, do your thing, but there are some people that I really do believe are just more open to it. Little kids that haven't been tainted by the realities of the real world will come to you and say weird stuff. Like, I saw a little boy in the closet, and you're like, whoa, what? And because they're not all.
I've heard that in LA a few times.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you have kids, they're bound to see something weird, but when they see something weird about something supernatural, it really does stick with you. But when an adult says it, you just sound stupid. And so, or you sound like one of those, trendy witchy girls, like, oh, it's a blood moon tonight, and it doesn't, no one takes it seriously. Or if they do, it sounds wacky. But then there are people like my mom or her sisters, because she has two younger twin sisters.
Creepy.
I think it is creepy. And they're nothing alike. But they all do share. They're open-minded in their spirituality. They love all those paranormal shows. They're just those types. And my grandmother, I would say she was one of those types, and she was a little bit more religious than my mom and her sisters. But she took the religion part of it and kind of held on to that. But my mom and her sisters, being a product of the 60s and 70s, like they kind of moved away from that. for me, I've always had an interest in it. I do believe that my intuition is actually, I live by my intuition. I know that sounds super wacky now, even at like 30, but my intuition, I really do believe in a lot of the things that I think,
Yeah.
you know, and when I had those experiences at the house, they were so real then that they're even real to me now. Like I think about that and I still get goosebumps because I wasn't alone, but I was alone. It just was, it's just so, and it really does haunt me. Like it's hard for me to go to bed at night, even now. Like I have to take like my nature made sleep aids to just like calm down and just relax. You know?
Were you 10 when you moved, right? Was it 10?
Yeah,
or like roughly?
Roughly around 10 or 11. And then we relocated to Boston.
Were you psyched when you like, because that you said it happened kind of frequently, so it's like, was there a point where you were like, please, can we leave?
Oh, because of the house. You know, I do have a lot of affection for that house, oddly enough.
Yeah,
I have a lot of affection for it. Like I have dreams about that house still.
Do you have a picture of it?
No, I don't, but you know, I can send you guys across from the house. It's in a pretty, not rough around the edges neighborhood at this point in the stage of the game, but across the street there was an old church, and then next to the church was an old Catholic school, and I actually went to that school for like 3 years.
Yeah.
Where it was so weird, I would walk across the street, and when I did make friends and they found out that I lived across the street, they're like, oh, that house looks haunted. Like all my little friends would say that, and I thought, no, it's not, you know, I'd get so defensive. My house is great. Meanwhile, I'm having all these experiences at night.
Very defensive. Any picture you could send us of either like the church or even you at that age would be amazing, because it would be great to insert that at some point.
I can get you some stuff. I will email you
over your voice of talking about like your age then. It's
for sure. The one thing I didn't mention or forgot to mention were the noises that I would hear, which were always on that stairwell where I would see that fog kind of show up, because it was an older house. It was all wood. Those stairs were, you know, really creaky. And I do remember, you know, when you're a kid and you can you know, the steps of your house so well, and you know all the different creaks in the floor and like what to avoid if you're trying to sneak out or whatever. I knew every creak in each stair, or which stair was noisier than the other, and what pressure you'd have to put on it to make a certain moan or groan. And there were nights where I'd be in bed and I couldn't sleep, and all of a sudden I full on hear somebody walking up or down the stairs in the same creak and moan and groan pattern.
That's just your dad sneaking out for a cigarette, man.
I can totally picture that too. But
no, I know
that's
exactly.
Terrifying.
It's scary as hell.
It was
as a kid, especially at that age, because you are, like you said before, you're so open to everything, but you're also open to the idea that like, this is terrifying. That could be anything. So you sit in your bed. I can remember pulling my covers over my head and just being like, go away, sound, go away, sound, go away, sound. I could. Yeah. I did that last night.
Yeah, I know. I do that in my 30s now. It's just like, it's something that stays with you, but also that feeling of being immobile, which you could even progress into like, what is that sleeping condition people?
Sleep paralysis.
Yeah, sleep paralysis. It's a form of that in a way, but you're awake. And as a kid, I just remember that feeling of feeling completely immobile, completely wrapped up in your blanket, and you almost scare yourself to sleep. It's so real, that feeling of like, I'm just gonna try to like scare myself to sleep, or just like pass out from your being so scared just by a sound, or
no doubt.
You know, it's really bizarre.
That's a tough way to be a arrested child.
Like
my place isn't haunted at all. I know I look like I haven't slept in a week, but that's To pay no attention. That's actually
Right.
just trouble with REM and
Meg looks really gaunt. Like
Yeah.
her eyes are just so droopy.
the girl that lives across from the old church is a little gaunt. Have you noticed?
Those bags under the eyes are intense.
I know. Yeah, she's so pale. What happened
Yeah.
to her with freckles?
That little Tim Burton character that lives across from the old church. I'm a little worried about her. Nah, she's fine, I'm sure.
Thank you so much for coming on and doing this. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the show. Thank you for having me.
This is exactly the type of story that we love hearing. So
Yeah.
Cool.
really-
And I've had others, but that was the one that really stuck with me. Like some of the houses, I lived in another house in Boston that was like an old brownstone in Charlestown.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Yeah. And it had a thing going on there. Not as intense as the one in Pittsburgh, but there was a stairway as well. It's something with the stairs. I don't know what it is. It's like repeating energy, if you will. But there was this weird little staircase that's went down to our like basement area, which in not many people in LA have basements. They don't even know what it is. But if anyone understands a basement, it's people from the East Coast and how friggin' weird and creepy they are. But this stairwell led down to the basement and the peripherals, and I wasn't the only one. Even my cig smoking skeptic dad would be like, "Did you see that?" Right, and it would be something going down that stairway, just
Wow.
like a flash, like always, like just in the same up or down the stairway. And Charlestown is one of the oldest neighborhoods. I think it is actually might be technically or older than Boston. That's what they say in Charlestown.
Yeah.
That's Bunker Hill, right? Like,
Yeah, Bunker Hill. The Charlestown Wharf is there.
yeah,
There's lots of history there. Lots of history.
yeah. Oh, I love that. We're both from Boston, so
I know, yeah, and you guys have ties to Improv Asylum. I actually used to take classes there
no kidding.
when
Who
I
did
was
you have?
young.
have
Oh
us?
God. I did that and Improv Boston, but
Me
improv
too.
was, yeah, that was my intro to all that world.
Yeah.
But I can't remember. Oh, I wish I could remember.
That's okay. Just making sure it wasn't me and that we just
Yeah,
had this
if
entire
it's not me,
conversation.
you're
And then
not-
you're like, I had you for 101 and 301 and
Yeah. Who's the guy? He's kind of blonde, bigger dude. God, I'm so bad with names.
Trevor.
Oh, Trevor. Yeah. Well, Trevor, actually, I went to school with him at Suffolk.
Oh, awesome.
He was a senior when I was a freshman.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Trev and I were on the main stage together for a long time.
I remember.
Yeah.
And
No,
then we
it's not
lived
connected.
then we lived in New York for many years together.
So ridiculous. I mean, moving from Boston to New York, you think it's gonna be, oh, I got this, and no, it's just
No, you just don't. You don't have it.
Nobody has it.
Nobody has it.
Nobody has it anywhere.
No, it's true. The
Yeah.
world's a mess.
Yeah.
It's
But
all
we have
right.
our ghost stories.
But we have our
That's-
ghost stories, and it
That
does
is
help.
true.
It does help a little bit.
It does.
Scare bones for Meg.
Scare bones for Meg are great. I mean, anytime we're talking about the Northeast,
I know. And
I mean,
a
what do you-
kid, just a
what do
kid
you
seeing this
do?
stuff on a regular basis,
yeah,
feeling a
I have
presence
so-
in your room. Oof.
I have so many questions for Megan about like her family and stuff. I don't know why. I sense that there's some history there when she talks about her mother and her grandmother being clairvoyant. I'm like, oh, I get so into those, like I get into families that are believers and families that have maybe some different energy than others. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to talk to her mother. I want to talk to her grandmother, and I can't say anything else. And her father, I'll buy him a pack of cigarettes. I'm gonna give that 7.9 scare bones.
Nice. I'm going 7-7.
7.7. We're right in the same ballpark.
We're in the same ballpark.
I have a feeling she has scarier stories than she was letting us know. I don't know why. I just feel it. I feel like we didn't get her to totally open up with us.
When I get a picture to put in this of that old church,
Yeah.
this will be bumped to like 8 0.5.
Agreed.
Like as soon as as soon as I get that, which I'll probably already have had in here, but like as soon as I see that in my email, I'm gonna be like, you know what, this is too much.
100%.